In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, praise be to God, and peace and blessings be upon the messenger of God. O God, there is nothing easy except what you make easy, and you make sorrow easy if you will. O God, teach us what benefits us, and benefit us with what you have taught us, and increase us in knowledge. O God, make all our deeds purely for your noble countenance, and do not let anyone else have any part in them. O Lord of the worlds, welcome, dear friends, and may God reward you for coming in this cold and rain. We ask God, the blessed and exalted, to make it a beneficial rain, and we ask God, the blessed and exalted, to accept from us and from you the month of Ramadan. You know from the guidance of the righteous predecessors that they would continue for 6 months after Ramadan, asking God, the blessed and exalted, to accept from them the blessed month of Ramadan. We return to what we were doing in the sessions on the Prophet's biography. Upon him be the best of prayers and peace. We had stopped at the 17th session, and this is the 18th session. After this interruption, I will need to mention 4 things so that we can continue what was interrupted or remember together the most important thing upon which we should build. The first thing is that Islam is the statement there is no God but God, not merely rituals, or worship, otherwise the polytheists in Mecca had 360 idols, and they had Christians, and they had those who did not believe in any religion, and they had Hanifs. It was a diverse and varied society, accepting all these religions. Why didn't they accept the new religion? Because the new religion was new, not just a new deity added to the existing idols, but a new system, a system that demolished the existing pre-Islamic system. There is no God but God. That's why you read in the Prophet's biography that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was close to his people, and they rejected him until he criticized their gods and refuted their beliefs. You have a God you call God, and you worship him. In your home, you can build a mosque or a temple for yourself. You are free, but for this to interfere in our lives, that is the verse, that is the prohibition. You find this in God's words in the story of the prophet Shu'aib. They said, O Shu'aib, does your prayer command you that we should abandon what our fathers worshipped, or that we should not do with our wealth as we please? Your religion, what is this? Interferes in our lives and our economy, and we should not do what we want. We have our wealth so we can do as we please. This is the secret, the first secret, why the pre-Islamic era did not accept Islam. Islam was not simply a new deity added to the existing list of accepted gods. Polytheists themselves had no objection to acknowledging the existence of a God, and that this God was the one who created the heavens and the earth and created humankind. So, where is the problem in this God believing, or in this religion wanting us to believe in the Day of Judgment? What does the Day of Judgment mean? This God has obligations, commands, and prohibitions, and he will be held accountable for them on the Day of Judgment. If you ask them who created them, they will surely say, God. If you ask them who created the heavens and the earth, they will surely say, God. They have no problem with that. But if this God has commands, prohibitions, and obligations for which he will be held accountable on the day of resurrection, this is what they did not accept. And man says, when I have died, will I then be brought forth alive? And he presents an example for us and forgets his own creation. He says, who will give life to bones while they are disintegrated? So the issue of belief in the Day of Judgment was completely rejected, because belief in the Day of Judgment, this God existence, intervention, and authority in this world. And this, my friends, is Islam's battle with falsehood in this world. You know, if Islam had removed the Day of Judgment from it, no one would have opposed it or cared to oppose it. So, the most important thing we must remember is that Islam was not just a new religion in the sense that it was rituals and ceremonies, but rather it was a new system that entered people's lives. Okay, the third thing that we want to remember together is the map of the Prophet's biography, so that we do not forget and remind those who have forgotten. We mentioned that scholars divide the Prophet's biography into two periods, and some of them divide it into three periods. Those who divide it into three periods start from the birth to the mission, from the birth to the mission. And how many years is this? How many years? 40 years is excellent. The second period is the Meccan phase. How many years is the Meccan phase? 13 years. 13 years, exactly. The third period is the Medinan period, which is 10 years. We mentioned a point that shouldn't escape your minds. If you open any book on the Prophet's biography, you'll find that the period covered in the months is larger than the 13 years, and the 30 years are larger than the 40 years. This is because life begins to move, be active and be productive when the state is established. In any book on the Prophet's biography, you'll find that the months are more significant than the events that preceded them. We also mentioned that to make it easier for us to memorize and understand the biography, the Meccan period, we mentioned the Meccan period can be called the stage of the idea, the stage of the call, the stage of the message. The Medinan period can be called the stage of the state, the stage of the system, the stage of the ruler. To understand the Meccan period, we can also divide it into smaller periods. We mentioned this in the 10th session. We mentioned from the first year, or from the beginning to the third year of the mission. This is called the call, the special call in which the Prophet, may God bless him and grant him peace, would select certain personalities. A Prophet saw that these personalities could be the pillars of Islam, the founding team, the first ones. Indeed, these first ones to embrace Islam are the best people in Islam. This special call lasted from the first year, meaning from the beginning until the third year of the mission. Then the permission or command to announce the call was revealed in his saying, may he be exalted, and warn your closest relatives, and in his saying, may he be exalted, so proclaim what you have been commanded and turn away from the polytheists. Here we have the Meccan period of 10 years, from the third year of the mission to the 13th. We mentioned that from the third year to the 6th year of the Hijrah, we can call it the period of apparent weakness, severe weakness, because as soon as the Prophet, may God bless him and grant him peace, announced the call, the stage of confrontation, the stage of torture, the stage of persecution, and the stage of humiliation began. When did this stage end? In the 6th year, two prominent and influential men, Hamza and Umar ibn al-Khattab, embraced Islam. We mentioned that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, we remain humiliated until Umar converted, and his conversion was a victory. So, in the 6th year of the Hijrah, respected figures from pre-Islamic society began to join the Muslim community. Now, from the 7th to the 10th year of the prophethood, these were the years of the Great Siege. During this Great Siege, the polytheists wanted to assassinate the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. Abu Talib, the Prophet's uncle, gathered the Banu Hashim and placed the Prophet in the Banu Hashim quarter, that is, in the neighbor Modern terms and station. Guards around him to prevent the Quraysh from reaching him. Quraysh saw that they had withdrawn, so they wrote a document declaring a boycott, announcing that they would neither sell to nor buy from the Banu Hashim, nor marry them, nor sit with them, nor speak to them. This was a siege, a very difficult period of 3 years, from the 7th to the 10th, during which the Muslims ate tree leaves, along with those from the Banu Hashim who sided with them from among the polytheists. From the 10th to the 13th year, we call this the period of searching for land for the state, because the Muslims, meaning the people of Mecca, had lost hope that they would convert. Therefore, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, began searching for another land and another people whose land would become the land of the state, and who would be its supporters, strength, and backbone. Then God guided him to the Ansar, and the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, migrated to them in the 13th year of the mission, which was the first year of the Hijrah. So, the Meccan period is clear, or we should have remembered it. Now, the Medinan period, which we mentioned, lasted 10 years. To understand the nature of the stages of the Meccan Medinan period, we can divide it as follows. The first 2 years were for preparation, consolidation, and readiness for the state internally. This period ended with the Battle of Badr. The Battle of Badr was the Battle of Badr was a pivotal battle because it was the war in which the power of the Islamic State was born. In it, the Muslims transformed from a refugee group, a persecuted group, a terrorist group, a so-called state, into a powerful force capable of fighting and achieving victory. The emergence of Islamic power was in the Battle of Badr. Then, from the second to the 5th year of the Hijrah, we can call these the years of building regional power in the region you are in. Now, why the 5th year? The 5th year was the Battle of the Trench, the Battle of the Confederates. This was the most dangerous moment the Islamic State ever faced, because the Islamic State at that time suffered from the alliance of the Confederates against it. In modern terms, it suffered from an international coalition, a world war. In this battle, the polytheists amassed more than they had ever amassed before or since. When the international coalition failed to eliminate the Islamic State, it became clear that the state became unbreakable, unyielding. That's why the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, "Now we will invade them, and they will not invade us." This is because it's the nature of states, the nature of the political world. In the political world, there is no vacuum. A state that feels secure begins to expand. A state that cannot expand begins to shrink. This is the way the world works. Therefore, after the end of this campaign, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, gave the good news that Medina would never be invaded again. Now we will invade them, and they will not invade us. Young men above, or the young women above. Well, then comes the expected stage in the political world. As long as you haven't been broken and the enemies haven't been able to break you, you begin to enter the stage of political recognition. This is what happened in the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, when Mecca, the capital of the Arabs and the major regional power, signed a treaty with the Islamic State. This contained a kind of United Nations recognition. Once a state is recognized by the United Nations, the United States remains an independent and sovereign state, meaning it can issue passports to its citizens who are recognized and can travel, study, and receive medical treatment. What is this region called? An independent, sovereign state is a crucial matter not easily achieved. That is why the Holy Quran called this treaty a clear victory. Indeed, we have granted you a clear victory. This verse was revealed concerning the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, even though it was merely an agreement. A quick glance at the agreement suggests it was humiliating for the Muslims. Then, the global call to Islam began, leading to the rise of global power. The greatest sign of this was the conquest of Mecca in the 8th year of the Hijra, after which people entered the religion of God in multitudes. This is a roadmap. I hope that whoever memorizes and understands it will grasp the features of the Prophet's biography and understand matters that might have been unclear to them if they didn't understand these stages. For example, they will understand why the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, did not act for a year after the deaths of 70 of his companions and then raised an army after the death of one companion. When did this happen and when did that happen? This will only become clear when you understand this roadmap and these stages. When did the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, only fight in Mecca, and when did he begin fighting outside of Mecca? You will understand this too only when these profound points are clear to you. This roadmap facilitates memorizing the Prophet's biography. We reiterate before we continue, let's reconnect. A fourth and final point I want to remind you of, so that those who have been interrupted can reconnect, is the Prophet's peace and blessings be upon him methodology and plan for calling to Islam. We discussed this in the previous session, stating that it is in the nature of people, in the nature of society, in the nature of states, and in the nature of nations to follow their leaders. People cannot thrive in chaos without leaders or guidance. If the ignorant prevail. Therefore, if we follow the Prophet's peace and blessings be upon him actions, we find that he focused on the leaders who are followed. He spent most of the Meccan period trying to guide the leaders of Mecca to Islam. Because if the leaders of Mecca embraced Islam, the people of Mecca would follow them. And if the people of Mecca embraced Islam, the Arabs would follow them. So, the shortest, least costly, and easiest path is for the people of Mecca to believe. He exerted an effort in this that the Holy Quran calls killing, as Allah Almighty says, perhaps you would kill yourself with grief over them if they do not believe in this hadith. This is the Prophet's peace and blessings be upon him 10 years, meaning most of the Meccan period. Now, when it became apparent that the leaders of Quraysh had become steeped in disbelief and would not believe, the Prophet began searching for the next step, which we might call the second item on the agenda. He went to Taif. Taif was the second capital of the Arabs, and therefore there was a kind of rivalry for leadership between the people of Mecca and Taif. We will see later that when Mecca was conquered, Taif raised the banner of disbelief. So the Prophet went to Taif. When he went to Taif, he did not go to the general public, but rather to the three leaders who ruled Taif. When they rejected him harshly and unleashed their foolish people upon him, the Prophet did not spend time calling the general public to Islam. Instead, he returned to Mecca and began presenting himself to the tribes, to the leaders, dignitaries, and prominent figures of these tribes. Until God guided the Ansar helpers, He sent Musab ibn Umair with them to ascertain their faith. Musab ibn Umair was the reason for the conversion of the Ansar leaders, Sard ibn Ma'ad and Uzayd ibn Hudayr. Then the Prophet migrated to Medina. A Prophet's plan in spreading the message was to target the leaders of the natural powers present in this region or environment. When the Ansar embraced Islam with their leader, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, turned his attention to them. After the Ansar converted and the Islamic State was established in Medina, the main battle the Prophet fought was against Mecca, because Mecca was the leader and capital of the Arabs. We find that all of the Prophet's battles were against Mecca, unless another tribe attacked. A Prophet did not open any fronts against Mecca, except for Mecca. Then, after reaching the Treaty of Hudaybiyah with Mecca, he began to focus on other enemies. After the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, the Prophet conquered Khaybar, even though he had never attempted to conquer it, despite it being a center of conspiracies. After the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, the Prophet began corresponding with kings, sending letters to Chosroes, Caesar, the Negus, the Muqurqis, and the rulers of Yemen, Oman and Bahrain. Then, after the conquest of Mecca, the Prophet began to focus on the Romans. Okay, this is a summary of the Prophet's peace and blessings be upon him plan for spreading the message. Okay, these are 4 things I wanted to mention before we resume. We left off in the last session when I mentioned that when a new call emerges in any society, this new call becomes a practical test of the laws governing that society. Either the laws are capable of absorbing these events, calls, or rebellions, or the people will try to change them completely. The first obstacle that stood in the way of the Quraysh in suppressing the Prophet's call, peace and blessings be upon him, was that the Prophet was under the protection of Banu Hashim. We mentioned before that there are 2 great reasons why God sends prophets from among the most prominent of their people, as mentioned in the hadith of Heraclius in Bukhari. Similarly, prophets are sent from among the most prominent of their people, or from among the noblest of their people, as stated in the hadith of Muslim. And the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, God did not send a prophet except from among the wealthiest of his people. What are these 2 reasons? The first reason is that this makes it easier to follow the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, because when a person has a position of authority among his people, unlike when he is despised, scorned and degraded, any idea that emerges will be more easily accepted. Who is the noble one of the people? Who is the great one of the people? For example, the group of people who advertise water or chocolate or anything else. Who do they bring in? He brings the popular actor and the popular football player, but he won't bring me, for example. Why? Because this is someone who is followed, loved, and has a position. The call must be uttered by someone who has a position among his people. The first wisdom is that this makes it easier to follow. The second wisdom is that this provides protection for the caller so that his call becomes stronger. Therefore, the prophets, as you read in the words of God Almighty, said, O Shu'aib, we do not understand much of what you say, and indeed, we see you among us as weak. Were it not for your fear, we would have stoned you, and you are not, was under the protection of his tribe, his people. This is good and consistent in the words of the prophets. Therefore, you find that the Quraysh often exerted effort with Abu Talib so that he would either take charge of silencing his nephew or hand his nephew over to them. Why? Because attempting to attack his nephew might spark a civil war. They avoided this civil war for 10 years, and even the solution they finally found was the one that also avoided the civil war. What was the final solution? Which is, we would take a man from each tribe and they would strike him as one man, so his blood would be dispersed among the tribes. That is, each tribe would have a share in his killing, so the Banu Abd Manafil could not fight all of Quraysh, so they would accept blood money or compensation. Pay attention to the nature of the balance of power that prevented them from assassinating the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. Therefore, we will find that Quraysh destroyed themselves in all attempts that did not lead to fighting. We mentioned that they were doing all attempts to defame the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, all attempts to harass him. When they passed by them, they would wink at each other, and indeed, those who disbelieved would almost make you slip with their eyes when they heard the reminder, and they would say, indeed, he is mad. They were speaking to Abu Talib, mocking the Prophet, and they said, why was this Quran not sent down upon a great man from the two cities? And the truthful and trustworthy one was transformed into a liar, a soothsayer, a magician, a poet, a madman. He could remain truthful and trustworthy as long as he was a good citizen who did not break Quraysh law. No, he was no longer a good citizen and had an opinion on the law and the constitution. So, what would he be? To disrupt social harmony and build a band group and the series of fabricated accusations. And we mentioned that when the Quraysh found their meteor discourse somewhat confused, we said that they even sent one of their men, Al-Nadr ibn al-Harith, to take intensive courses in Persia. In other words, someone who, in our modern terms, went to Hollywood to study how films are made, so that he could return and turn people away from the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. Indeed, Al-Nadr ibn al-Harith went to Persia, learned the hadiths of Rustam and Isfandiar, and came back to Mecca. He would sit with any group the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, had met and tell them the hadiths of Rustam and Isfandiar, saying, are my hadiths better than Muhammad's? And after a while, he bought a slave girl, so that the matter wouldn't be solely about intellectual influence, but would also have psychological, emotional, and even sensual effects. So, whenever he heard of someone inclined towards Muhammad's words, he would send the slave girl to invite him to a private gathering. So we had a meteor discourse, and their special envoys and a stage were set up to promote the call of the Prophet. May God bless him and grant him peace. When the Quraysh felt that their meteor discourse was confused, and the Hajj season was approaching, they put in place the plan that we mentioned, which is the plan that, oh, people, agree on a statement that you will say about this man so that your statements do not differ among the Arabs. And now, if this Arab who came to Hajj heard from the beginning that so-and-so is a soothsayer, a magician, a poet, a madman, what will he do? He would want to see for himself which one of them is a priest, a magician, a poet, or a madman. So they held the council we talked about last time. Al-Walid ibn al-Mudharis said that the most plausible explanation was that he was a sorcerer who used magic to separate a man from his wife, a man
وبالفعل اعتمدوا هذا القول وخرجوا إلى الناس في الموسم وكان كمان في مهمة خاصة تولاها أبو لهب. أبو لهب هذا بالنسبة
From his
للنبي كان
father, they adopted this explanation and went out to the people during the pilgrimage season. There was also a special mission undertaken by Abu Lahab. Abu Lahab was the Prophet's uncle, and moreover, Abu Lahab's two sons had married the Prophet's daughters. The relationship was very close. Whenever the Prophet passed by a group of people, Abu Lahab would be behind him, saying, "Don't believe him, he's a liar. Don't let him lead you astray from your religion." They would say, "His uncle knows best." Here again, you see how pre-Islamic ignorance utilizes talents. This is consistent. Anyone who follows the news and pays attention will find that if someone goes out with a call to action or rebels against the law and the constitution, the first to celebrate him is one of his relatives. They bring his father, his brother, his ex-wife,
لأنه كلام القريب مصدق. تمام؟
because the word of a relative is always believed. This campaign launched by the Quraysh, of course, mention that the words of God Almighty were revealed concerning Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira, "Leave me with him, whom I created alone and granted abundant wealth and sons present with him, and made life easy for him. Then he desires that I should give him more. No, indeed, he was obstinate toward our verses. I will burden him with a steep ascent. He thought and plotted, so may he be destroyed for how he plotted. Then may he be destroyed for how he plotted." Then he looked, then frowned and scowled, then turned away and was arrogant, and said, "This is nothing but magic passed down. This is nothing but the word of a human being, God Almighty."
الأشياء التي نجحت فيها الحملة أنها شوهت صورة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم، حتى كانت المرأة في الصحراء
said, "I will drive him into hellfire. And what will make you know what hellfire is? It leaves nothing remaining and spares nothing." This campaign succeeded in some things and failed in others. Among the things the campaign succeeded in was that it distorted the image of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, to the point that a woman in the desert, if someone passed by her, would say to him, "Beware of the young man of Quraysh." The phrase "woman in the desert" is similar to what we see in our contemporary reality. Of course, our Egyptian brothers might not understand this. Torfik Akasher, what was he? He was a figurehead for the working class in Egypt. You would find Torfik Akasher in cafes in villages deep in the jungles of Upper Egypt, or in the outskirts of the country, and no matter how foolish he said, there were people who believed him. Indeed, if a woman in the desert passed by a rider, she would know he was going to Mecca and would say to him, "Beware of the young man from Quraysh, lest he lead you astray from your religion." But the most significant failure of this campaign was that the mention of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, spread throughout the Arabian Peninsula. So, everyone who went to Mecca passed through it, or circumambulated it, now had a mention of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. This mention came to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, through individuals, carters, or figures whom the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, could not have reached himself at this stage. For example, our master Dimad al-Azdi. We will find a group of people, and here also pay attention to the strategic thinking of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. All those who embraced Islam from outside Mecca, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, sent them back to their tribes. He did not want them to stay with him in Mecca, nor did he encouraged them to declare their Islam in Mecca. Therefore, we will find at least 5 famous figures in the Prophet's biography who came to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and said, "I have embraced Islam," and then returned to their tribes. Her people called to her people and awaited the establishment or declaration of the Islamic State. They joined the Prophet after the migration to Medina. Among these figures, Asadi, said, meaning he was a man who heard that there was a madman among the
إن في قريش فتى مجنونا يقول
Quraysh. He said,
وكنت
I
أعالج
used to
برقي من هذه الريح يعني من هذا الجنون
treat and recite incantations
فذهبت
for this
إليه إلى
affliction,
النبي صلى الله عليه
meaning
وسلم
this
وقلت يا رسول
madness.
الله
So I went to him,
إني
peace and blessings
أرقيك
be upon him, and said, O my
وإن
nephew,
الله
I
يهدي
recite
على يد من
incantations for
شاء
this affliction,
فقال
and God
النبي
will
صلى
heal
الله عليه
whomever he
وسلم
wills through me. Do you want me to?
الحمد
A
لله
prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said,
ونستعين
All praise is due to Allah. We praise
نتعوذ
him, seek
بالله
his
من
help,
شرور
and
أنفسنا ومن
seek refuge in
سيئات
him from
أعمالنا
the evil of our own
من يهده
souls
الله
and
فلا
from the
مضل
evil
له
of
ومن
our
يضلل
deeds. Whomever
فلا هادي
Allah
له
guides,
أما بعد
none can lead astray, and whomever he leads astray,
أعد علينا
none
ما
can
قال
guide. Then he said, Repeat what you said.
فقالها النبي
So
صلى
the
الله عليه وسلم إن الحمد لله
Prophet,
نحمده
peace and
ونستعينه
blessings be upon him,
نعوذ
said,
به من
All
شرور
praise is
أنفسنا ومن
due to
سيئات
Allah. We
أعمالنا من
praise
يهده
him,
الله
seek
فلا
his help,
مضل له
and
ومن يضلل
seek
فلا هادي
refuge
له
in him from the
أشهد أن
evil
لا
of
إله
our
إلا
own
الله
souls and from the
وحده لا
evil
شريك
of
له
our deeds.
أعد
Whomever
علينا
Allah
ما قال
guides, none can lead astray, and whomever he leads astray, none can guide. Then he said, Repeat it a third time. So the Prophet repeated it to him, and he said, I have heard the words of the sorcerers and the words of the poet, and the saying of the soothsayers. What is this? Of course, these words, my good people, pass
لا
through our
تؤثر فينا
minds
شيئا
now, and they do
نحن
not
تكلمنا في
affect
لقاء
us at
سابق
all.
إنه العرب كانوا أصحاب
We
ذائقة
spoke in a council that the Arabs were people of a
والنبي جاءهم بقول لا
very high
يتكلم
linguistic
معهم
taste, and
إلا
the Prophet came to
بالمعروف
them with a saying that they could
وكذب
not do but
وقالوا
submit
ساحر
and surrender. That is
واسمعوا
why
لهذا
those who
القرآن
disbelieved
والغوا فيه
said,
لعلكم
Do not listen
تغلبون
to this
والوالد
Quran
هذا
and
هو
drown it out
أقرب
so that you
قول
may
يصدر
prevail.
من
Because
فم
Al-Walid
الإنسان من
said, The
السحر
closest thing to saying is that you
والحديث
should
بين
say,
المرء
A
وزوجه
magician has come with a saying that is
والسحرة
magic, by
يجن
which he separates a
نبذ
man
من
from his
النبي
wife. A very
براقين
high level of
حتى لم
eloquence
يملك
and of
العربي نفسه أمامه يعني
we
النبي
find meanings
قال
that the
ألا
Arab could not
أحب الحج
control
إلى
himself
أدناها
in the face of. I mean, the Prophet said, now then, and he did not
فبايعه على
need
الإسلام
now. Then, so he pledged allegiance to Islam.
بايعه على الإسلام طيب من هؤلاء أيضا صحابي
Okay, he
آخر
pledged
سيدنا عبادة
allegiance
بن
to
الصامت
Islam. Well, who are these
الصحابي
also?
وسيدنا
Another
عبادة بن
companion named
الصامت
Amr ibn Abbasir al-Salarmi and
قصة سيدنا
our
عبادة
master
بن
Amr
الصامت
ibn Abbasir.
طيب
This is also similar to the story of our master
حديث
Dimad.
إن في
Well,
صحيح مسلم وحديث عمرو بن
the
عبس
hadith
العقدي
of
في صحيح
Dimad is
مسلم
in
هنا
Sahih Muslim,
حديث
and the
آخر
hadith of Amr ibn Abbasir is also in Sahih Muslim.
أتى رجل
But
إلى
what
النبي
does
صلى
the
الله عليه
hadith of
وسلم
Amr ibn
وكان
Abbasir
الصحابة
say?
كانوا من
This
الحنف
man was one of the
فكان
Hanifs, like
يقول
those we mentioned who were in Mecca. He
ذكرنا أنه
used to
في مسلم
say,
لابن
as we
عباس كان يقول كنت أرى
mentioned in
الناس
Muslim on the
يجتهدون
authority
بالحج
of
ولا
Ibn
يفعلون
Abbas, I used to see
حتى
people in the
سمعت
pre-Islamic era as being misguided, until I heard
فجاء
about
إلى
this
النبي
man
صلى
in
الله عليه
Mecca.
وسلم
So
وقال
he
له
came to the Prophet, may God bless him and grant him peace, and
يعني
said
انتبه
to
إلى
him,
النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم
Who are
وقال
you? Of course, when he went to the Prophet, may God bless him and grant him peace, he said, I went to
عليه
him
قومه حتى دخلت
secretly, and
عليه
the
فقلت
Prophet was afraid of his
من أنت
people, until I entered upon
فلما
him and
خرجت إليه
said,
قلت
Who are
أنا
you? He
رسول الله
said, I am a
قال
messenger. I
أرسلني
said,
الله قلت وبما
And
أرسلك
what is a
فقال
messenger? He
أرسلني
said, God sent
بصلة
me. I
الأرحام
asked, And what
وكسر
did you
الأوثان
send me with?
وأن
He
يوحد
said, He
الله
sent me to
لا
strengthen
إله
kinship
غيره
ties, to break
فقال
idols, and
سيدنا
to
عمر
worship
قال
God
النبي صلى الله
alone
عليه
without
وسلم
associating anything with Him. Our master Amr said,
فسلمك
I will
أبايعك
follow you, so
والنبي صلى الله
extend
عليه
your
وسلم
hand
قال
so I
له
may
إنك
pledge
رسول
allegiance to
الله
you. The
ولن
Prophet,
تبقى
peace and
فترة
blessings be
معهم
upon him,
ولكن
said, meaning
سينتهون
that you
إليك
cannot
وأنت
stay
بهم
with me now and not
وقتهم
see my
وخشيتهم
situation and the people's
بقية
situation,
الحديث
but
أنه
return to your
أن ابن
people,
عباس
and
جاء
if
إلى
you
النبي
hear
صلى الله
that
عليه
I have
وسلم
appeared,
فقال
then
نعم
come to
أسلم
me. The rest of the hadith is that Amr
كيف
ibn
يعرف
Abs came
الإسلام
to the Prophet in
وكيف
Medina and learned from him the rulings of Islam. Here is a
في
pause, my
السيرة وفي
brothers
فهم
and
الدين
sisters.
وفي
May
فهم
God's
هذه
prayers
الواقعة
and peace be upon the
النبي صلى
Prophet.
الله عليه
This is
وسلم
a
قال
significant
له
point in
ولقد
understanding the
أرسلني
Prophet's biography,
انتبه إلى
understanding the religion, and
أرسلني بصلة الأرحام وكسر الأوثان وأن يعبد
ties
غير
and to
الله
break idols
وحده
and
لا
to
يشرك معه شيء.
worship God alone without associating anything with him. A first point here is his statement, and to break idols. Even though the prophet at that time had not broken any idols, nor would he have many idols in the near future, it is true that we must differentiate between speaking the truth and being able to apply, implement, and realize this truth. The fact that we may be unable to
هذا لا يعني كتم الحق.
enforce the truth at any moment does not mean we should conceal it. Sheikh Al-Tarifi, may God release him from captivity, had a very beautiful statement to those who call to God. And the people of knowledge must speak the truth and proclaim it, even if it is done so that the truth is not lost. Lest people come and say, we never heard of this among our forefathers. So, revealing the truth is necessary, even if one is unable to implement it completely. Therefore, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, despite his people's audacity towards him and their disregard for religion, mentioned that one of the things he was sent with was the destruction of idols. The second important point is his saying, peace and blessings be upon him. He sent me to uphold kinship ties. This is serious, my friends. This is serious. Look at our master Lot. When he went to his people, he informed them of monotheism, that they should worship God, yes, but at the heart of monotheism, belief, and the message was addressing the abomination they were committing. That is to say, the prophets did not come to people with theoretical principles, nor did they come
التي هو يعني صراعات في علم الكلام، صراعات في التفاصيل، صراعات ما وراء الطبيعة.
to people with conflicts about belief, which is conflicts in theology, conflicts over details, conflicts about the supernatural. The prophets came to people with what would improve their circumstances. Our master Shaib, yes, he brought monotheism, yes, but he also brought reform to the calamity of his people, which was cheating in weights and measures and the people's shortcomings. We will see in a little while, God willing, when we come to the migration, when the Negus asked Jafar ibn Abu Talib, what is this religion that you have abandoned the religion of your people for and have not entered into my religion? What did our master Jafar say? He said, O king, we were a people of ignorance, worshipping idols. He remained silent. He said, we worshipped idols. Then a messenger came to us and commanded us to believe in the oneness of God, and that's it. He said, we worshipped idols, ate carrion, mistreated our neighbors, and the strong among us devoured the weak. These are the practical problems, the problems in people's lives. Until a prophet came to us from among ourselves, whose lineage, truthfulness, trustworthiness, and chastity we knew. He commanded us to believe in the oneness of God, to maintain kinship ties, and to treat our neighbors well. He mentioned to them the laws of Islam. Any preacher, anyone associated with a call to Islam, anyone associated with a people of knowledge who leads people astray with theoretical issues and theological debates is in reality a corrupter, not a reformer. This is in reality a corrupter, not a reformer. It is, of course, a form of betrayal. It is attributed to Ali ibn Abd al-Salam, may God have mercy on him, that he said, whoever is among a people or in a land where usury is widespread and speaks to them about the prohibition of adultery has betrayed God.
المعاصر في عالمنا
You
الواقع
are now in our contemporary world, in our
بأنواع الشهوات
real
والشبهات
world, a
والمظالم
world full
والمآسي
of various
والمفاسد
types, desires,
وتجد
doubts,
رجلا جالسا
injustices,
في
tragedies, and shameful acts.
كل ما
You find a
يتكلم
man
فيه
sitting in a gathering of
قضايا
scholars,
ماضية أو
and all
قضايا
he
ماتت منذ
speaks
قرون
of are theoretical
لو
issues, issues
قضايا
that died
كافرة ممكن
centuries ago,
إما مفسد ليس
or
مصلحا
issues that the general public doesn't
وليس
understand. This
مبلغا
is a corrupting influence, not a reformer. This is not our messenger of God, the blessed and exalted. So, we must understand that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, I mean, the Prophet, what he used to receive the pledge of allegiance from people entering Islam, what he used to give people, which is the pledge of Islam. What is the pledge mentioned in Surah Al-Mumtahana? O Prophet, when believing women come to you pledging allegiance to you that they will not associate anything with God, nor steal, nor commit adultery, nor kill their children, nor bring forth falsehood which they have fabricated between their hands and feet, nor disobey you in what is right. This pledge, which is called the pledge of women, is the pledge of Islam. We will come, God willing, to the distinction, but know and understand that Islam has two pledges, the pledge of Islam and the pledge of support. The pledge of Islam is by which a person enters Islam. The pledge of support is what the ants are pledged to protect the messenger of God, which is hearing and obeying in times of ease and hardship, spending in times of hardship and ease, and protecting the messenger of God. May God bless him and grant him peace from what we protect our fathers and families from. O everyone who enters Islam, what did the people pledge allegiance to the Prophet for? So that he does not steal, commit adultery, kill his son, or spread falsehoods. The pledge of allegiance to Islam was not a theoretical pledge, merely an abstract idea floating in the air with no practical effects. This is a matter of utmost importance. Anyone who sits in a gathering, whether a gathering of knowledge or a gathering to call to God Almighty, and does not try to improve people's lives, but rather drags people into theoretical battles, old battles, battles whose participants have died, and battles that people do not understand. This is a corrupting influence, not a reformer. This is someone who runs away from people's problems. I hope this is clear, because it is something you can even use to measure the general public who claim to be involved in calling to Islam, and the general public who claim to be knowledgeable. Now, among the most famous people who came to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was Abu Dihar al-Ghifari. The story of his conversion to Islam is well known.
سيدنا أبو ذر كان رجلا من الفدائيين. سيدنا أبو
Because
ذر
Abu Dihar was a
وكان
man
رجلا من قبيلة يعني كان
of the
أغلبهم
Gifar
يعملون
tribe,
قطع الطريق. يعني
most of whom were highway robbers. It
صلى الله عليه
was not
وسلم
expected that the
يصل
Prophet, peace
إليه
and
من
blessings
تلقاء
be
نفسه
upon him, would
قبيلة غفار.
reach him of his own accord.
ولكن
But when the
لما
news of the
جاء
Prophet
إلى
reached him, he the Prophet,
النبي
peace
صلى
and
الله عليه
blessings be
وسلم
upon him,
أرسل أخاه أولا لكي يأتي إليه بخبر
sent
النبي
his
صلى الله
brother
عليه وسلم.
first to bring him
فذهب أخوه استطلع
news of the
الأحوال في
Prophet,
مكة.
peace and blessings be
حصل
upon
على
him.
المعلومات
So his brother
وعاد
went
بها
and
إلى
investigated the situation in Mecca, obtained information, and returned with it to Abu Dihar in his tribe, Gifar. Our master Abu Dihar said, "The report that reached me was not satisfactory. It was not a sufficient or satisfactory report. So he mounted his camel and went to Mecca himself. Of course, the
طبعا الآن النبي في التخفي. احنا الآن في فترة
Prophet was now in hiding. We are now in a period of apparent weakness. So what did he do? He kept circumambulating
ظل
and
يطوف حول البيت ويبيت
sleeping in the shade of the
في ظل الكعبة. يطوف
Kaaba. He would
يشرب من زمزم
circumambulate,
ويبيت
drink
في ظل الكعبة.
from
فانتبه
Zamzam and
سيدنا
sleep
علي
in the shade of the Kaaba. Our master, Ali ibn Abi Talib, may God be pleased with him, noticed
بدأ
him. Our
يستفسر
master
يعني
Ali
يقول كأن الرجل لم يقضي طلبته.
began to inquire, meaning he said the man did not
الرجل لم
fulfill
يحقق
his
مراده.
request,
الرجل لم
meaning
يصل
the
إلى ما يريد.
man did not achieve his goal, the man did not reach what he wanted.
طيب ماذا تريد؟ قال إن كتمتني
said, Yes, well, what do you want? He said, If you keep it a secret, I will tell you. He said, Do it. He said, I want this man who claims to be a prophet. And here you find that our Master Ali, may God be pleased with him, during this period of secrecy in the biography, there are many passing indications that show that the companions had this sense of security. Our Master Ali, may God be pleased with him, said, When night falls, I will come to you, so get up and follow me. If something disturbs me, I will get up as if I am pouring water or as if I am fixing my sandal, meaning he will make a certain movement that tells him there is a follower, a monitor, an informant. So he did so, and Abu Dihar, may God be pleased with him, followed him until he entered upon the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. Well, he entered upon the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and, as we mentioned, as soon as the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, speaks to a man who has some kind of mental, psychological, and emotional readiness, he will embrace
ووجد طلبته، وجد حلمه. فأبو ذر رضي الله عنه ما هو إلا أن أسلم
Islam. Of course, our master Abu Dihar, can you imagine someone who came from the Gifar tribe on the outskirts of Syria and found what he was looking for? Meaning, he found his dream. So Abu Dihar, may God be pleased with him, no sooner had he embraced Islam than he resolved to announce his Islam inside the Kaaba, meaning he was going forward as long as he was not shot of it. The presidency or the national security headquarters, I mean. The important thing is that he went to the radio and television building. The most important thing is that it was the best place to provoke the polytheists or achieve the advertising objective. Abu Dihar, may God be pleased with him, went and testified before the Quraysh that there is no God but God and that Muhammad is the messenger of God. Of course, as usual and as expected, the people seized him and beat him until he fell and was hurt. He was only saved from them by Abbas ibn Abd al-Muttalib, the uncle of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, who was a disbeliever at that time. And how did Abbas address them? He addressed them with their interests, saying, Wait, what are you doing? This is a man from Gifar. Your trade passes through them. What does that mean? In modern terms, this is one of those who control Bab al-Mandab Sheikh. What does that mean? It's not like ships or anything will pass through. So he said, This is a man from Gifar. Your trade passes through them. They said, Don't you see he's a reed? He said, he chose for himself. But now we'll enter into an international problem and trade will be disrupted. So they left him alone and Abu Dihar returned to the Gifar tribe. He returned as a Muslim. Of course, our master Abu, whoever reads his biography will find a man of extreme enthusiasm, to the point that it is narrated that half of the Gifar tribe converted to Islam at his hands before they had seen a prophet or heard the Quran. Look, one session with a prophet filled him, may God be pleased with him, and he returned as a preacher, and half the tribe converted to Islam at his hands. A tremendous preacher, I mean, amazing. Can you imagine? No, but one session, one man, half the tribe, until he returned to the Prophet. May God bless him and grant him peace. After the migration to Medina, and after the migration to Medina, the other half of the Gifar tribe converted to Islam. Now, this preacher, we must mention something. This preacher, full of enthusiasm, the Prophet, may God bless him and grant him peace, did not give him any administrative or political work, and Abu Dihar even asked, O Messenger of God, will you not employ me? Employ me, meaning make me an employee, make me a governor, make me part of your administrative apparatus. What did the Prophet say? He said, O Abu Dihar, you And in another hadith, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said to Abu Dihar, O Abu Dihar, I advise you not to be in charge of two people. If there are two, don't be their leader. Don't be in charge of two people, and don't manage the wealth of an orphan, and also do and be a financial manager. This is from the proper utilization of talents. Not every enthusiastic preacher is capable of saying a few words. Not everyone who sits in this council can do all the things you wish for or imagine. For example, our master Bilal ibn Rabah, and we will come to him, God willing. Look at the legend of endurance, the legend of enduring torture. Our master Bilal ibn Rabah, the Prophet did not give him anything. Well, we will find after that people who had a history of disbelief and enmity towards Islam, but as soon as they embraced Islam after a few months, the Prophet gave them command of armies, and the armies included the first Muslims. Our master Abu Dihar was distinguished by this enthusiasm, this strength, this fervor, and we can say in a positive sense, this drive, this ambition, this torque. Good people are useful in calling to Islam, but they are not useful in managing people's affairs. Managing people's affairs requires a calm and intelligent personality, someone who can test people's character and approach them from their own perspective. Not everyone who embraces Islam is truly righteous and can take charge of every matter. These are matters we must reflect upon and learn from the life of the Prophet. May God bless him and grant him peace. Similarly, there are those who embraced Islam from outside Mecca, such as our master Al-Hasan, the father of Imran. He was a wise and respected man among his people, and his son embraced Islam before him. It was due to his wisdom and his position among his people that the Quraysh hoped that if he spoke to Muhammad, Muhammad would renounce his religion. It is clear that he was a dignified, mature, and wise man. He approached the Prophet, may God bless him and grant him peace, and spoke to him. The Prophet approached him and said, O Hasan, how many gods do you worship? He said, 7. 6 on earth and 1 in heaven. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, if hardship comes, to whom do you call? He said, the one in heaven. Look, the truth is that in times of crisis, in times of hardship, all the embellishments and trivialities disappear. And if harm befalls you at sea, those you call upon will vanish except him. When someone falls into a crisis, scientific theories and political calculations evaporate. I even found, glory be to God, that's why they say there are no atheists in the trenches. During battle, fighting, and death, there are no atheists in the trenches. I found some who did believe in religion. I mean, in some memoirs, there's no need to go into detail now. They wrote, and I said at this moment, if there is a God, I hope he will save me. And he lived his life not caring about God at all. And if harm befalls you at sea, those you call upon will vanish except him. And God Almighty said, and what they used to call upon before will vanish from them, and they will think that there is no them. So the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, if hardship comes, to whom do you call? He said, the one in heaven. He said, if wealth is lost. He said, the one in heaven. He said, if children are lost. He said, the one in heaven. So the Prophet said, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, prayed for him alone, and he associated 6 others with him. It was as if this mature, intelligent, and wise man was only now realizing this meaning. He embraced Islam while sitting with the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, his son, our master. Imran ibn al-Hussein was also present. When he saw his father embrace Islam, he stood up, kissed his hands, feet, and clothes, and wept. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, he wept. I felt tenderness. I saw Imran when his father entered upon him as a disbeliever. He did not rise for him, nor did he turn to him. But when he embraced Islam, he recognized his right. These are some of the figures who came to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, from outside Mecca and embraced Islam. This was one of the things that the Meat-Eater campaign, launched by the Quraysh at that time, failed to achieve. Of course, we said that all of this happened during the time when the Prophet was in hiding and when the Muslims were being persecuted and tortured. Our master Abdullah ibn Masud, that's 2 minutes, but okay. I will tell you the hadith of our master Abdullah ibn Masud, and we will continue it next time, God willing. Our master Abdullah ibn Masud said, the first 7 to openly declare their Islam were the Messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him, Abu Bakr, Amr, Sumayr, Suhaib, Bilal, and Mikdad. As for the Messenger of God, God protected him through his people. As for Abu Bakr, God protected him through his people. As for the rest, the polytheists seized them, dressed them in iron armor, and exposed them to the scorching sun. None of them refused to comply with their demands, except Bilal, for he considered his life insignificant in the cause of God. This hadith requires careful consideration and will, God willing, serve as our introduction to discussing the harm and suffering inflicted upon the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and his companions after him. This will be addressed in the next session, God willing. We ask God, the blessed and exalted, to teach us what benefits us, to make what he has taught us beneficial, and to increase us